Hi all. I do not know what happened with that video. So I'll do my best to convey some of that information. I am the Realms Marketing Manager, Francisco Mendoza. My pronouns are he, him, and I'll be moderating this panel today. And I just want to quickly go through some house care stuff. So first of all, I want to do a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that the realm is located on the ancestral and unceded territories of the Lenape people. The occupation of this land is an ongoing harm that continues to impact Native peoples, cultures, and communities. In addition to the land we are physically occupying, the technology and equipment we are using consume resources that are based in other physical lands. We invite you all to research the native tribes of the land you occupy, and we're sharing a link in the chat that provides an easy way to start learning about this. We are committed to continue to take meaningful steps towards and hope you will join us in this work. Our wonderful programming producer, Yang, will share that link in the chat. And because the video was not playing correctly, I just want to remind everyone that if you want to ask questions for the panelists, we will have a small Q&A at the end. So please use the Q&A function. And if you want to just chat in response to what's going on, but it's not a question we need to address, feel free to use the chat, which you have already seen some people posting in. So let's welcome our panelists. Why don't we go around and say our names, whatever information we want to share, and also what TV shows we're working on. In my case, I am working on my life. That's the TV show I'm working on. Laura and Mfoniso, Noah, let's come online. And this is, by the way, Chester. It's my cat. He might be participating non-verbally.
Chester.
So I'm gonna popcorn it over to Lauren. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. You may have to prompt me again. My name is Lauren Yee. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And what TV stuff I'm working on right now, right? Okay. I have a couple development projects, so like turning books into TV shows, ideally. And then most recently, I've been staffing on Billions and then a new show for Hulu. And I had a baby. So
Not bad.
That like it's not like it happened and then so lots of stuff.
Season finale, yeah. You wanna get the show going, you get a character pregnant, always gonna like I love it. Who do you pass it on to?
Mfoniso.
Hey Lauren. Anyway, hi everyone. I'm Mfoniso Udofia, the She series. I'm actually really happy because I'm not like working or staffing on a show right now. I'm taking a breath. But I just turned in a script for Lessons in Chemistry, which is going to be on Apple TV. And I am juggling some development stuff, which, like Lauren said, turning books into TV shows, and then also working a lot in like the film sector right now. I think the thing that I'm most excited about though is, what is it called? I'm like so excited and I'm forgetting the name. A League of Their Own will be coming out. And that's the latest thing that I've done that's coming out, but I wrapped that a while ago.
Love that. So where is it coming out? Like,
that's going to be on Amazon.
Amazon, amazing. Thank you, Mfoniso. And that leaves Noah.
Hey, I'm Noah. My pronouns are he, him. What am I working on? I am developing and adapting an Israeli series for 20th century on the drama side, creating a comedy for them on the half-hour side. Recently finished staffing a few months ago on a musical series coming to Hulu called Up Here. And so right on the heels of that, finished that, and a week later, 2 weeks, something like that later, I'm now currently staffing on the second season of 9 Perfect Strangers. Is that what it's called? Yes, 9 Perfect Strangers. Should know. Yes, 9 Perfect Strangers, also with Hulu.
Did you get to meet Nicole?
I have not, but she is around. She is around.
Please keep us posted. Thank you, everyone. So excited to have you all here for this chat. So the first thing I was curious about is just from a personal perspective, I don't usually call myself a playwright, and I tend to resist that when people say like, "Oh, you're a playwright." I'm like, I'm a writer who also writes for theater. Recently I did a lot of journalism. Now I'm back into plays. So, I like to travel. And I was wondering for you all, do you identify yourself primarily as a playwright? Would you say, and TV is sort of complementary to that? Or are you like, no, send it my way, whatever medium, and I will tackle it?
I'm not send it my way. I'm not send it my way in whatever medium. I will tackle it. Please don't send right now a novel my way. I'm probably not going to want to tackle that. I do consider myself primarily a playwright, even though there will be people who have looked at like the last 5 years of my life and are like, really, you've been in film and TV for a while now. But I guess it kind of comes down to like where heart spaces are.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you asked me that question, and yeah, playwriting like is heart space still for me. I am beginning to figure out what heart space in the TV world looks like, but it's taking me a second to, and I will say that it's not until this last year that I'm like, oh, this is where I sing, this is what my voice does. And I feel like I have a little bit of control over that. So ask me that question in 5 years and that might change. But right now, I still, when I think of myself, I go playwright.
Right. And you just said that and it made me think like, well, there is something also to the amount of how much the writer is centered in each medium, right? That like will also like make you perhaps, for me, I think feeling ownership over my writing, I guess it would change with each medium. How about you, Noah? You're muted.
Yeah, I very much co-sign that. Hearing that question, I think my immediate impulse was to reply like with playwright, because I think I agree, it feels like heart space. I also feel like for me at least, there's this really like a tricky knot that I find myself encountering, which is like the question of like economics. And that like I can't actually say that like playwriting fully could sustain my life. And that's a reality for me, and that like film and television are what pays the bills. And so I feel like if someone asks me like where does my artistry lie, I would answer one way. And if they ask, what do you do for a living? I would have another reply, versus what actually like tangibly pays your bills is another, like, and so I feel like there's an impossibility for me there a little bit that I am just kind of grappling with in my own personal life. But I just so much agree, like, where's the heart space lie? And I feel like for me, it still lies in plays.
In the theater. How about you, Lauren?
I was like, I co-sign all of that. I love the phrase heart space, because I think it kind of beautifully describes like what I also feel. It's like theater and plays are where, I've had most of my training where I feel like most comfortable, where it feels like you kind of get to like swim and like swim deep. And like, at least for me right now, just like, I take it more personally for some reason when it's like not working, or like trying to figure out it. It feels like it's more of a reflection on me and who I am, for better or worse. Yeah. Whereas I think for me, TV and film, it's just newer. Like I was not someone who kind of grew up studying it. So just like learning about the structure and kind of how to find myself in that structure is a lot newer to me. And so for different reasons, like TV and film kind of can be exciting in the way that you're like, oh, this is new. I don't know how to quite do this yet. Let me try to figure it out.
Right. That's so interesting. Because it's making me think about the answer that I gave of like, well, I did come to the United States to work in television. And then I eventually started doing theater. So obviously, so I guess there's also that difference, which I guess then my question is, how did you come into television? It sounds like for most of you, the experience was secondary to like pursuing a career in theater. Would that be accurate to say?
I can share because mine was deeply, deeply weird, which was
Go for it.
I had actually
We
like
love
I had
weird.
not not for lack of interest. I had just zero plans of working in film and television. And in some ways like maybe like kicking the can down the road quite a bit. But I graduated from grad school in the spring of 2020. And it was the worst possible time to try and graduate from theater school.
Right.
And so honestly, the very boring, weird, sad answer was that my pivot to film and television was actually just kind of born out of sheer necessity. My theater work just like on the heels of having graduated, any theater work, the theater work that I had planned for like about a year, 2 years out, just gone. Very little of it has come back. Unfortunately, including Playwrights. Well, yeah, I mean, it just it didn't come back, and I just had to pivot very, very quickly. And so I graduated in that May on Zoom. I told my agents at the time that I needed managers. I met with managers 2 weeks later. They started sending me on meetings, and by the end of the month, I had that was all kind of ass backwards actually. I ended up with one of those development deals first. Told them I didn't know how to write television at all. It's not really something we studied. And so I was like, I need to learn how to do this. And so then staffed after that. And it's just been a sprint since then. And that was honestly kind of it. And so I feel unhelpful in that like there was no like artistic inspiration that really necessitated that pivot. But honey, here we are on the other side.
So we have COVID to thank for
COVID strikes again. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about you, Mfoniso?
So the question is how I came to be in TV.
Right. How did you find yourself there?
Yeah, for me personally, it wouldn't have happened without my playwriting career being pretty like established. So I what was it? It was like around 2016-ish, I think. Please don't quote me on it. I had a play that did really, really well. And it's in that play that did really, really well, garnered enough attention that I filled out my team, because I just had a theater agent and she's amazing and I love her to pieces. But it was once that was Sojourners really crested, I was then able to get a manager and I was able to get people on the film and TV side who then started proponing me and my work. And I want to say like 5 or 6 months after that, then I was starting to go on the water bottle tours, where those general meetings where you're like meeting everybody and you're like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what I want to pitch. I don't know anything about this business, but I'm here. And this also, like the timing was perfect because this was the period where they were really like interested in playwrights. I was going on, I did not have a spec, I did not have a pilot, I had nothing except the accolades from a play that I had done. And I was able to get my first staff job. I was not anybody, I did not dream about TV. I did not think about it. I wasn't like planning to like pivot there and then like build out my financial life. No, none of that. It was all of a sudden the manager was like, have you considered? And I was like, what's the pay scale on this? Wait, didn't understand, didn't know, I'm here. So that's how it happened for me. That's how, yeah.
Right. What was the best water you got?
Oh, God. There was, I don't know, Laura and Noah, if you've done like how you've done these, but there was one day where I went on 13, it felt like 13 in a day, where I started like at 10 a.m. I ended at 7. I will tell you, is it J.J. Abrams' office? Is exciting to be in. I liked playing with the toys. But yeah, I it's hard because when I was doing it, I was also panicking because I'd never done it before. So I can't tell you what my favorite was. I always like get through it without sounding like an idiot because they would ask me things like, what's your favorite TV show? And I'm like, bro, I don't really watch TV.
go. Surreal.
They said, get her out.
My goal is to have a bunch of the, like, what is the sweater that has like a glass bottle, but they, I want to say Voss, maybe. That's my, I want to have a bunch of Voss bottles. That's how I know I made it. Lauren, how about you? How do you play yourself in the little group?
Well,
Sorry.
all right. So I'll just, before I say mine, I will second Mfoniso in like kind of the strangeness of the water bottle tour, because I feel like even if you do have agents, they don't really tell you what to say. You're just like, what should I be doing? Especially if you are just beginning to get into TV, you're like, I don't have anything I want to do in TV yet, but it feels like you're supposed to be like pretending or like no. Or I think somebody was like, yeah, they had a general and then they like sold a show. They just came up with something offhand and then they made a TV show. I was like, how do you do that? I don't know. It's very, it's mysterious. I think it is still mysterious to me. So I think I always thought I would just remain in theater. I think probably because when I was going through grad school, it was at a time where like TV had it hadn't yet pivoted into what it is now. Like, I suspect that some or all of us would maybe not be involved in television if we'd been doing theater, if this had been 10 or 20 years ago. That there's just really been, I think, an explosion of need, and I think just an interest in getting people outside of who they were getting before in terms of like genre, voices, all of that. So when I was in grad school, I really didn't think I'd do TV. Like, we had a screenwriting class and a TV writing class, and I didn't complete the assignments for either one because I was like, I don't really understand this.
Bravo.
Yeah. And then kind of when I got a new theater agent at ICM, like that, she brought along kind of the TV people, but also I didn't have a spec. I didn't have a pilot. I kind of was like, TV agents tell me what to do, and they're like, you need to write a pilot. And I was like, I don't want it. I resisted doing that for so long because I didn't kind of feel the heart space in the way that like I felt with plays. And so I kind of was half-assing it of like, yeah, I'm interested in TV, but I didn't really take any steps to develop that interest, like actually writing a pilot. Like, I just worked on my plays.
Right.
And I think for the longest time, it was like kind of frustrating in this in-between space, because I didn't necessarily know if I wanted to write for TV, because I'd kind of heard stories, like people's horror stories about getting into a room with like terrible hours or a terrible boss. And I was like, I don't know if I want to be in that environment. But at the same time, kind of being a little jealous of like that people would go into TV, like people would kind of be plucked up and put into TV. And I'd be like, but what is that like? Is that exciting? And so eventually when I got staffed, I was staffed off of my plays, like the things actually that I was very proud of. And I think like showed my voice. And I think in retrospect, it was a combination of the timing that people were willing to read playwrights and plays more, and that I'd been working on things that I deeply cared about, rather than trying to like write a pilot that would have been just very perfunctory for me.
And it's so interesting that you're saying that, what if it had been 10 or 20 years ago? And it's making me think, I do think that there may be something to streaming, and but maybe with streaming there was for a little bit a return to the idea of like, let's invest in creators, right? Bo Williman was one of the first, like, oh, the playwrights are going to put a lot of money, and then there's House of Cards. And I've heard throughout grad school, I also heard the whole like, playwrights are so hot right now. And I wonder, like, to that comment and in your experience, and by your I mean all of you, is there such a thing as like a particular role that a playwright will play in a writer's room? Or when developing a show, is there something about your theater outlook and experience that comes to your TV writing that like shapes that? You know, Noah, for example, you said like, I don't know how to write TV, didn't even go to school for that. Is there something about your theater practice that you see reflected in TV, and like in that way being a playwright does single you out, for example?
I can go. Yes and no. Yes and no. At least in my personal experience, I found that I had little to no idea how to structure television or a storyline in television. It's just a radically, you know, reductive to say, a radically different form. And so it was a thing that I realized very quickly when I started that I did not know how to contribute in the room that way. The kind of like, there were just brains there. And I mean this in the best possible way. There were like mathematical brains in there who understood story structure in this way that I just didn't. And I could learn, and I would learn, but I didn't have that skill set, you know, off the bat. But what I did have, and I believe all playwrights have, I think it is our superpower. We just have an innate understanding of character in a way that I think sometimes maybe some of those mathematical brains don't. Or if they do, it's not maybe, you know, at the fore for them. And I realized that I could contribute in the areas of like character, you know, emotional, like everything, the emotional. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. I don't know why I said that, but you get what I'm saying. Like there were other spaces in which I could contribute, and I found too that like there's something about playwrights. I think we just have also an innate understanding of like humans in space, and not just like, and I mean like on the stage. I mean just like interacting with each other. Like sitting next to a director behind a rehearsal table, you know, there's a give and take, how to communicate with actors. Maybe it's empathy, or maybe, you know, like understanding like emotional intelligence that I find I tap into very, very frequently in a writer's room, because writer's room, it's like this like fish feeding, like, you know, everyone talking and thinking and being very vulnerable, and sometimes it doesn't work and you have to say that, and like understanding how to remain human in those spaces, I think is a skill that I have observed many playwrights having, and so I find that, you know, taking place every day too.
I love that.
I don't think there's anything to add beyond what Noah just said. I just wanted to say I totally concur. You know, 5 years later, I am now able to like see like story long form and move cards on a board and go, oh, it could be like this. But that I had to learn. The thing I is what Noah just very articulately said. You know when there's an emotional step missing in a character arc, and you know you can feel when, oh, we had to lie a little to get this character to do this thing. What about like pitching this scenario, which doesn't make that a lie anymore, it makes that a truth. That I think playwrights are really, really good at, and you know, and like dialogue that sounds real. So
playwrights, some of the best, like in my experience, sometimes playwrights are maybe not like the most vocal people in a room, but honey, they turn out those scripts, that dialogue, they come alive on the paper, and they do.
Right, because there's maybe a demand for TV, right? Like, it's interesting that you brought up structure, right? Like TV, in my experience, going to school for all three, is the most structured one. It's the one where you're like, this is the time you have, make sure you convey your message. And that can sometimes lead to a writing that's like stiff. Brother, remember the drug deal. You know, it's like you gotta do it. And I think there's something interesting, particularly again, to think about streaming and maybe changing what people need. Are they gonna tune in every week? Are they gonna binge? And that is allowing us with playwrights in the room to explore different structures and ways to, as you guys are saying, humanize the characters. We are close to the Q&A, and I want to make sure to tackle something that you brought up, Mfoniso, which is taking a break, which I love. I love that you're taking a break. I wish I was there. But the economic angle, right? Being in that position, you know, Lauren was saying maybe a few decades ago we wouldn't have been in television, but as Noah also said, there was something about like, is a career in theater financially viable? What is the role of the economics in your engagement with the arts? Because as I will say, like just from a personal perspective, it does impact me. I think I do feel valued to some degree for the money that I'm being paid. If I love an idea, I love an idea, and it doesn't really have to do with the economics, but I do weigh things in the balance in terms of like, I also need to get paid. There's bills. I need to reapply for my visa. So it can't be like only for the love. So I wonder, like, even if, for example, Mfoniso, your decision to take a break, like, what is the role that economics is playing in your practice?
I'm going to be very bald here and go, I can take the break because I have stacked enough to take the break.
You're right. Right. And that, you know.
Different than talking to me 8 years ago, where I could not make a decision like that, where I was juggling, I don't know, 3 or 4 teaching gigs at a time, and then also writing, and I couldn't, there was no break. But I've also I've had moments on TV shows where I've had to reckon with my decision and what I said yes to. And I think I've gotten smarter. I hope I have, in terms of like really vetting the project and making sure I understand like the showrunner, the mission statement behind it, and that it is going to feel as optimal as it can feel while working within a machine that is TV. There's certain things that you're just gonna have to get over. It's TV, there are deliverables, you're moving at this pace. So that's, you know, that's a framework there. But I need to make sure that the art kind of can live alongside my mission statement. And I am now at a place where I can kind of do that. And that's what I'm choosing to do so that I don't feel the ick in the, because it can feel quite icky. And I don't like it. It affects my brain space. It affects my, my body, my spiritual space, which is very important for me in order to write in the long term anyway. So that's what I've done. I'm interviewing showrunners as they're interviewing me. I am asking questions about the show I'm on. And if I love a piece of IP, I'm very interested in what the showrunner is changing and why, and whether that it lives alongside my mission. Like Lauren and I worked on a show, Pachinko, and I did this with Sue Hugh, and I ended up loving Sue Hugh. And so it was easy to say yes to working on Pachinko. And go, oh, I'm getting some monetary gain from this, but I also very deeply believe in the reason why we're doing this show. And that is a power I do think writers have and can use. Like, you can decide to interview your showrunner at a certain point, if you want to. I acknowledge that when you're first starting out, that feels daunting, as you're like, this is my first show. I don't know if this is going to be my last. But it is a thing you can start to incorporate if you want to. So
I love that. Lauren, is Sue Hugh a nice person, or is
I'm like a real trick? No, Sue is amazing.
Keep it real.
I think just like working on that show Pachinko, like I learned so much, and I think like I got spoiled in a certain way because like people structure the rooms all sorts of different ways. And it felt like she had a very clear plan of what she wanted, which made our job, made all of us look great because it looked like we helped come up with it. Whereas I feel like she had this vision that we just helped to, push down the way. And that I think in this room and like the best rooms, there just is the idea of like best idea wins, or you're just kind of like tossing things up there together, rather than, I've heard of rooms that are very like, kind of, you have to like play the game, or there's hierarchy, or like in order to pitch something, you have to first pitch it to someone else who will then help you pitch it later. And I was like, that sounds exhausting and just too much work. So yes, also you should watch Pachinko.
Yes, endorsement for Pachinko Live. You heard it here first. I agree. No, I love that. The idea that like there's something to the economics that gives you that freedom to feel safe in like what you're choosing to engage with or what you're choosing to participate in. That I love. But you know, since we're on the topic of economics, and I'm keeping an eye on the questions, and I can sense from some of them this idea of like, but how do I get in? And I will say, as a writer, it does feel like theater has always been so much more accessible to me, not only from the myriad of open subs opportunities, although someone reflected this to me recently, which I agree with. Open subs, there's still a like, it's open subs, but you know the associate artistic director and they flag your application. So they're like, you know, but it's open, let's say, you know, that there's this impression like, there's a pile, you can add to the pile, and eventually maybe you'll get there. And a lot of people are asking questions in the Q&A that do reflect like, how do I even, what's the analogous process? You know, you guys were all talking about like, well, I had representation. And that helped me perhaps sort of get in the door. What, in your experience in meeting the writers that you've met, like what are the ways in? Is it sort of like, well, you gotta know someone? Because, you know, there are contests or whatnot, but I wondered in your experience of what you've seen, like, how do you go through the gate?
There's so many different ways, and none of them are easy and none of them are standard. So like, you heard the way that I went. I wasn't even dreaming about it, but I was coming up as a playwright at a time when like production companies and studios were very interested in playwrights, at a time too when people were really interested in African stories. And I was like, I hit a niche, like right an opening. I've also talked to people who really came up in what I think is the more traditional way, where you're coming up as an assistant and then you're rising into the position of staff writer. And that can be really tricky. It's not always guaranteed. I have met some of the writer's assistants who have been assisting for like what feels like years. And then I've met the writing assistant who had an incredible showrunner who, when something happened, they were boom, moved right in and thus began their career. You know, I've also seen people who have come in by being experts in their field. People who are like poets, activists, doctors, who come in like almost like a consultant kind of way, but the show really needs them. And then boom, they're a writer. And then like on our show, Pachinko, Sue Hugh knew right away just to make our poet, who's incredible, EJ Ho, hi EJ, like a part of the room, you know? So it's what I will say is true is there is a level of opacity, and it is hard to know how to break in. And I would not have been able to do it without having some real advocates, because it was like, oh, I didn't even know it existed and I didn't know what door to knock. My manager did.
Right. And to that question as well, sort of looking at the Q&As, I think there's something interesting there. Like you said, I hit a niche. There was a moment where it's like, if you're a playwright, come tell me what you got. Is it still that moment? Are you guys finding that like, nah, get your samples in order? You know what I mean? Like, go write a pilot. Where are we in terms of like, it's cool to work with playwrights?
This is interesting. And the only thing I think I would add to is that, like, and to your point, Francisco, I think what I have found in my experience is one, I've still yet needed to write like a pilot or a spec script or anything. I think plays can carry you everywhere. And talking with my managers the other day, they've been working with, you know, some playwrights for years and years and years now, and they still just continue to send their plays for them. But also, so that aside, so like if the foundation of like how I'm getting sold to the world is like on the back of my plays, I think there is a potentially like very yuck reality that my social location is being utilized. Like my agents and managers will get requests, and I hope it's not as bold as this, but it's like we need queer folks, we need queer Hispanic folks, we need queer Mexican folks, you know, and then suddenly it's like, okay, well, we have a little roster, you know, like, and sometimes that's made clear to me, and I'll be sent on a meeting for something, and they're looking for queer Mexicans. And like, I have to like reckon with the fact that like, what does that mean? What is being asked of me? Can I contribute in a way that feels, do I feel comfortable speaking as monolith? And you know, and like sometimes the answer is, I trust the showrunner enough, and I trust the questions they're asking, that I can feel like I'm okay with this. And oftentimes I'll turn down meetings, or I'll turn down projects because I don't like the way, this sounds so bad, I don't like the way in which I was approached. Like the social, like my social location was being weaponized and not engaged with. And that, I think, for me is the difference. And I think end of thought. I think that's the end of my thought. Yeah, I mean, because it's so funny that like I've been asking my agents, like, how do you feel comfortable us talking about you? And I had to like really, really have a conversation with them about like, these are the kinds of things I am comfortable being approached with, and these are the things that I'm not. And that taught me that, like, I think, you know, on an executive level, with executives at studios, companies, pods, whatever have you, how they ask for things can be very, very gross sometimes. And so that I think, but also to, you know, the flip side is that my social location can open doors. And so I think it's reckoning with that, and knowing how one feels comfortable moving through the world, being talked about, being engaged with, knowing what they want to write about, how they want to contribute. That I think is its own path forward too.
Lauren, you've
Yeah, and I think like what I'll add to what Noah just said, and like beautifully put. I love that you actually like had that meeting with your reps to be like, let's talk about, you know, how you were speaking about me out in the world. I feel like it's this double-edged sword that I grapple with, because there's sometimes when I'm like, yes, the material feels personal. Like if it's based on a book or something, it just feels personal. And you're like, yes, I want to be involved with that because I feel something for it. But you also like don't want to be, you know, like that token, or like you hate getting pitched that thing just because of kind of what the identity they read on the paper is, rather than, yes, and it reflects something in my writing, that there's like a kinship there, that like not just that you're the Chinese American writer, but like actually there are all these similar themes in your writing that connect to it. Like I always get pitched like the Kung Fu thing, and you're just like, it has nothing to do with like the themes that I'm interested in as a writer. And I'm like, whereas, you know, like there are things that kind of are close to my identity, that I feel a kinship with, that match my writing, where I'm like, yes, like these are the projects that you should like definitely keep an eye out for. So it's so tricky.
Like it's basketball, not kung fu. Like you know what I like.
Yeah.
I like basketball during the Communist Revolution. Like that you can pitch.
I did get a staffing gig once based on the fact that I'd written about basketball. Like they needed a particular type of person who knew about basketball, and like that felt very fun in terms of like being pigeonholed.
That was what I keep bringing it up, but it was because it was such a good show. The rule was, that's what Pachinko was. I was pitched that show because it was about lineage.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think what was great was when Sue told me you were working on this show, and I was like, like I knew about 5 different reasons why she had chosen you from your work.
Yes. It was
that felt so satisfying.
Right. Because you're also making me think like I also carry sometimes that resentment of like, yeah, because you're an immigrant. Like the other day, literally someone told me like, yeah, but you're a Latino. Like, hasn't that happened? I was like, okay, well, and it's sort of like balancing that with the fact that my writing a lot of the time tackles things. It's just because they're personal to me, and so it's like the pigeonholing versus the the one I'm exploring, and particularly in playwriting, which is such a writer-driven medium. And that makes me think about, someone asked it in the Q&As, and I'm thinking about that too. You all are very prolific playwrights. I keep seeing, we get Google alerts for our playwrights, and you're always like, well, the new season has this person. And we're like, yay. How do you balance that? How do you maintain an active playwriting career with what I imagine are such a strong demands of the TV industry?
I will admit, theater for the past 2.5 years has been very hard. I think it just for me, the pandemic hit at a time when I knew, just personally, I was kind of trying to figure out the next steps in theater and what I was interested in writing about. And I think for me, going into TV as much as I have in the past 2.5 years has been a product of the fact that, Noah, there was a week, I think, during the early pandemic when 10 shows canceled. And that's just what it was. But it was how do I continue to create things that I could maybe move down the field? And that was TV, because it was still kind of chugging along. Whereas theater, I was I don't know what to write that's going to feel important, or just important to me in 2 years. So I feel the theater stuff really has taken a back seat because of kind of what we're living through right now.
Is it also perhaps, I don't want to, but I imagine in your case, and everyone in this room, I've heard this thing of well, sometimes my show will premiere in the production that I followed closely. And then if you see me in a season announcement somewhere else, it might just be a production that I'm not involved with, or has that happened?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, you do the premiere, and then there's a lot of work that sometimes in a wonderful way lives without you, that somebody gets the blueprints and is I'm going to build this house based on it. And they make choices that you would have never thought of. So sometimes that can be fun. Right.
And that, that's not necessarily your time that you're dedicating to this specific thing. Any other thoughts in terms of making it work, having it all?
I gotta be honest with you. It's been a tough month. I have a very, very tumultuous relationship with the American theater right now. And we can have a whole other Zoom about it.
Yes.
But more and more, I realize the American theater, as much as it loves to vaunt emerging playwrights, has very little infrastructure to actually support them. And I am still getting, having productions canceled, and not because of COVID. It's just it's tough. It is tough to emerge, frankly. And I feel it acutely because there is now an industry that, don't get me wrong, has its own issues, but work is sustainable. And I guess just right now, and maybe it's because, like I said, weird month, tough month, but I feel as if I'm drifting towards a path that feels more sustainable, though the other one may still hold where my heart places. And I have to reconcile with what does it mean when your heart place can't fully support you in the way that you need it to. And I think that is just, maybe that's the eternal question. But it's tough. Thankfully that, work is still happening. I have not yet cracked how to do both at the same time. We're in the middle of casting right now for production of mine in the fall. But what that means is I am starting Zoom. Well, that's the other thing too. It's in-person room in LA. So I'm back and forth. So I'm in New York right now, trying to get on Zoom. The only person on Zoom, so I can't really figure out what's happening in the room. Have to run to auditions, then I have to run back on my lunch break and get on Zoom again, back to auditions, stay the rest of the night on a different time. And it's just it's not sustainable. Right. And I'm questioning this week, at least this week, how if it is possible to give your full self to both at the same time. Maybe there is. I assume there is. I have not yet cracked it, and that's, I think, what I'm figuring out.
I am seeing the headline tomorrow. Noah Diaz said, I love it.
Noah Diaz cancels the American theater. Sorry. Oops. Sorry, everyone.
Crack that either. How to hold both at once. But what I've been able to just like ascertain is I can be in production. I cannot generate. So
No.
yeah, so that means the last 4 or 5 years or so, it's been a minute. It's like since 2018 when I started in TV, I have been very slow to generate new work. I have been editing. I have been inside of production processes with old work that I kind of really understand, but I am not creating anything new. And that's part of what this break is to see where me and the theater live alongside each other again. And I will say, at least for me, that this long in TV has done something to my brain where plays are not coming out of me in the same way. And I don't know what this means yet. It's too early to say, sorry. But yeah, I'm gonna see what it is after like 5 years of being back-to-back writers' rooms and back-to-back development, what it is now to be with just myself again.
Mm-hmm. And actually that brings me to something I was curious about myself. I had a conversation with the lovely Anna Munch, who was supposed to be in this panel, but she went on to live her best life and write a season finale for the TV show that she's writing. We love. And I remember she was the one who sort of elucidated that difference for me between staffing and developing work, which I did not know. She was like, no, I make most of my money in adaptations and creating your shows rather than staffing in them. And I wonder, I'm hearing you say, Mfoniso, like generating new work. What's your engagement with development? Is there a part of you that like maybe uses more that like, let me create, there's an engagement that's a little different from like, we're breaking down the episode, we're writing the script.
I mean, I do work with I do develop a lot of work, but I'm developing off of IP, which is different, I think, than if I were developing, say, the UFOT cycle into something. I still have a base layer of somebody else's art that I am holding. And of course, adding my own eye into it. So that is an art form in itself. But it is different. It is different for me. To then be alone with a play that I am generating from blank to then hopefully to stage. When I'm developing, most of the time I'm developing other people's work.
Right. Is that the case for all of you?
I do both. I have to date mostly adapted, but have 2 projects that are originals, my own.
Oh, nice. Meaning this is a show that doesn't exist in any shape or form, and you're crafting it from scratch.
That shit is hard, my friends. That shit is hard. You think writing a play is hard? It's like, then they're like, great, okay, so what's the first season art? Great, what are you thinking for season 3? Wait, if it's a hit, what about 5? And I'm like, honey, I barely know what's gonna happen in the pilot. You want a whole season? What the hell? I don't know.
I'm like, I wrote a blurb for the first episode. Does that convince you?
I might be wrong, but it feels as if people are doing that, what you're talking about, Noah, less and less.
Yeah, that's true.
Studios will even go like, what's the IP? It feels like I'm talking as myself, no statistical analysis behind this.
No, I think that's true.
We are live in 70 markets now.
It's like I could go in with the UFOT cycle and they'll go, oh, okay, this is great. But if I were to pitch them the UFOT cycle from my mouth, and they'd be like, okay, so let's figure out if this can work. So it's what Noah's talking about, I think is gorgeous and is amazing when it's done, but I find also rarer.
Right. I think, the hashtag here is I am my own IP. I am the IP. I'm the and changing the industry. Sorry, Lauren, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just laughing because that sounds so familiar to me, where it's like the IP, it's like, can it be a book? Can it be a series of tweets? Could it be I think somebody optioned like a caption on an Instagram post where they're like, we're trying to turn this
Literally.
into something.
So basically
how
what
many-
I'm hearing is you need to create fake profiles that are tweeting the things that you actually
Yeah.
want to write, and then
I mean, how many meetings I've gone on where literally I'd be like, so here's an original idea I have. And then I will literally get emails from those executives being like, here's this article I found. Here's this book I found. Here's this. I mean, literally just trying to find something that they can take to their boss to be like, it's based on this, but with this like angle. My God,
Right.
if I have to have another angle in my whole life, like, we're trying to like shape something into an IP. It's actually like a satire. It is satire sometimes that they try to like fit to mold the IP.
That's right.
the industry, you guys. Well, I don't want to keep ignoring the Q&A like I'm doing. So something that was asked because I'm getting to it. Something that I was asked in the Q&A, and it is, I think, a valid thing. We spoke about how representation happens, how representation was the way that you found yourself into the industry. What was your experience in securing said representation? And a couple of you also mentioned grad school, and I'm wondering, like, were those two tied for you? How did that happen for you?
I'm sorry, ask the question again. I think I
The
might have
question
missed
is,
audio.
how did you get your team? How do you get an agent? How do you get a manager? And the add-on that I'm making is like, was grad school a factor in that? Because a lot of people were asking, like, do I need to go to grad school?
I will very quickly hit two things from my perspective. No, you don't need grad school to write in television. Frankly, I think it hurt me more than it did good, because I'm sitting here like a big dumbass being like, well, dramaturgically, and they're like, doesn't work. And I'm like, okay. No, you don't need grad school in my experience, to staff in a room. I got my team while in grad school, but I don't think because of grad school, if that makes sense. I was with my theater agent. It was kind of just assigned film and TV people at that time. Basically told them, I'm in grad school, there's nothing I can do for you. So didn't speak to them basically for 2 years, graduated. It didn't really speak to them until I reached out to them and said, hey, it is now time. I am ready. And then they set me up on meetings with managers. So it was from my theater agent that the team just kind of like the web just kind of slowly built.
To go back a step further, how did you get your theater agent?
A theater wanted to program my show. Miss Stephanie Ibarra at Baltimore Center Stage, Queen. And at the time I did not have an agent. And she was like, just because it was friendly. It was very, very nice of her. She was like, to do these kind of negotiations, things like that, it's best if you have an agent. I'm going to set you up on meetings with some folks. She sent me on meetings with a few people, and that's where I met my theater agent.
Got it. Okay, so it was really like the necessity of negotiating a contract, and then therefore speeding up of that. How about you, Lauren? How did you have
So I got my first agent in grad school. And then kind of right around at the time that she was like leaving, or was going to leave the industry in the United States, I got my second agent, Di Glazer. I think because like I'd worked with, a director that she represented. So it kind of felt like I got to like see her work in action and be like, wow, that person seems to be advocating for their client very well. That feels exciting. And kind of when I signed with her, they had like, ICM had TV agents along with that. So that's kind of how I got paired up. And I really feel like for me, things clicked once I got a manager, and the manager reached out to me because a play of mine was showing like a couple blocks from like his office. So I think he was like, oh, let me go see this play. And he did. And like, that's how we got connected. And I feel like that was a relationship where it felt like we really kind of had like understood each other and had a thing going on. And he was the one I think that was like, okay, I see what we need to do. We're going to do this, this, and this.
Right. Mfoniso, you mentioned that Sojourners, which was produced at the Playwrights Realm and the New York Theater Workshop, that success allowed you to build a fuller team, but how did it start for you?
Yeah, I'm going to tie this to the grad school question as well. I don't think you need to go to grad school. I didn't go to grad school for writing. I went for acting, and I went in San Francisco. So I was a little far flung from the New York industry that I was dropped into in 2009. So for me, a lot of it was getting to know the industry, getting to know people. So like coming in 2009, I didn't get my first thing. And it wasn't an agent or a manager. It was like a 10-minute showcase of my work. I think not until around 2011. And that's when it's like, okay, how can I get more people in seats? I had an amazing girlfriend at the time who, was really theater adjacent, was a producer, and was pulling people in to see my work. And then that's as the application process started. I was like applying to like 30 a month. I was an insane person. I had an Excel sheet going, this is my plan A, I'm gonna make it work. And I don't know a lot of people. And it is institutions like Playwrights Realm and at the time, National Black Theater, like a Rising Circle, I think, and places like that like took their chances on me, and I was working agentless through that. And then it's not until I got into Sundance through application that I got my first theater agent because of that, like testing at Sundance. And then after that, I was able then to like fill out my team. But there was a period of just like shovel in the dirt work.
You against the world. Yeah. I am in that period. It is wonderful. All right, y'all. This is the time to wrap it up. I asked you in the beginning what shows we're working on, have worked on, but I wanted to close with you giving a shout out to the work that you would love of your own, current or past, that you would love for people to experience. As I want to just remind everyone who's watching that you can always check out the program, which has everyone's bios and more information, so you get familiar with them. But what is the thing, like speaking about Heart Space, what is the piece of work that you'd want people to see or read? Or and I'm gonna go first. In my case, I just spent 6 months investigating an article for American Theater Magazine, which was like a huge part of my life and the first time I had done anything like that. So if you Google American Theater Magazine, Francisco Mendoza, you will find it. It's called What Happened at the Lark. And it's just such a big part of my career recently. So you can experience that. I'm gonna go to Lauren.
I will say I read that article, and I think like I found it so helpful and grounding. Like for those of us who I think heard about the Lark news and like were really shocked by it, I think it helped in so many ways to kind of like contextualize it, understand it, and like grieve that loss. I think that we've all been feeling about like what the Lark's demise meant. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, like I already said, like, go subscribe to Apple TV and watch Pachinko because it's like gorgeous. I'm trying to think of what I mean. This is not what you were asking, but I was like, I have a 2-month-old right now, and that feels like meaningful work. That
I have a kid. Yeah.
That I'm reflecting on right now. Like it feels like not quite a break in the way that Mfoniso's spoken about in this panel, but it does feel like a time of just kind of like sitting and a lot of just like reflecting. So I was like,
Pachinko and Baby. Love it.
Yeah, I was like, you can check out Pachinko, you can't check out the Baby right now, but that's work I'm proud of.
Amazing. Noah, what about you?
Oh man, I am in my own kind of break. I've been a very, very bad television watcher. I've been a very bad like movie watcher. I've just not been ingesting media in the way that I should. I just need I think a mental brain break from just like life, love, the pursuit of happiness. It's tough. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know. I am a big reader. The only thing I think of is there's this book that was just released called Night Crawling, by Layla Motley, I believe, which has been kind of like shaking me every night when I read it. That's kind of like, I think the only thing I can think of. Oh, and I just rethought that.
From you, from your.
Oh, from me?
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I got nothing, honey.
Nothing. Don't want
I got
anything,
nothing.
no
Joe,
idea.
I don't know. Joe versus Carol is on Peacock. I worked on
Okay.
that. Other things that I've worked on are still filming. That's kind of it.
Okay.
Oh no, I want to support someone else. I just resaw Fat Ham at the Public. If you're in New York and able to see it, go see it. It's amazing.
Hot Rack, Pulitzer Prize winner. Love
Yeah,
it.
it's very, very great.
You know, how about you, Mfoniso? What can we watch of yours?
I admit that I did a little bit of what Noah did and going, oh, these are the works that are exciting me.
I thought so too.
No,
I
and
thought
then
so too.
share them. Please go ahead and share them.
That's what I thought.
I'm gonna say, like, I have been rereading Edwidge Danticat and like falling back in love. I mean, just love. It's been like uplifting my spirit. And then I'm absolutely in love with Yagyasi, from Homecoming Queen to Transcendent Kingdom. Just okay. So those are my loves. Now for my work. I'm gonna co-sign Pachinko. I feel as if everybody who's listening is now knows where I stand with the show Pachinko. Please go watch that on Apple TV. Also, you know, I'm really excited for A League of Their Own, and I'm excited because they're holding African-American narrative and an African-American queer narrative from the 1940s, which is actively invisibilized. And I just think the heartbeat behind the people who are creating that show, extraordinary. So please watch that one. And I'm also interested in, this is from another playwright who's a showrunner, Andrew Hinderocker. Let the Right One In is being adapted.
Oh, yeah.
And I had the joy of working on the show. I will say forthright, it was one of the most difficult shows I've ever worked on because my mind doesn't process horror, but my God, did I learn so much. And it's a show that I look back to along with Pachinko, like as a totem show for like how much I can learn, and then also how incredible the story is. And that's going to be looking at, like, you know, addiction and vampirism in a way that I think is going to be very exciting. So
Yeah.
what I'm interested in. And I guess for plays, if you're in New Jersey, go see her portmanteau at Jersey Street Playhouse. That's what I got.
Yes. Shout out to theater as well. Love it. Yeah, I'm so excited for Let the Right One In. I talked to Andrew about it, and he pitched me his angle. Sorry, no one triggering.
Angles, always angles.
But I was so excited. I'm like so looking forward to it. Well, I just want to thank you all and everyone who was watching. This has been wonderful. Join us up next in July. We'll have a class with Blue Beckford-Burrell about writing artistic statements, which sucks, but you have to do it, and she'll make it easy. And then we'll have another panel the week after for new leadership models and what does that look like. So join us then. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.
No cigarette in the waiting room, only chairs and magazines, and a printed stack of papers that the nurse says you should read.